Hello everybody, thanks again for joining me here in Garage Talk with Oval Window Racing. Today, I'll try to make this kind of a short video, but we got a lot of stuff to discuss. I'm going to be talking about how my project's moving on. As you remember, if you can refer back to the video before, you see that I got the old transmission back in Simon. And we're moving along and making more progress on putting the engine together. But you can see here, I still got it in pieces, here and here. Got the old short block back together though, which is a good thing. But what today's discussion is going to be about is how I kind of am going against the grain here and there. And I will tell you right up front that this is not a how-to video. This is a video on how I'm doing it. So, you know, if you're going to experiment, please experiment at your own risk. Don't follow me. Actually, continue following these videos and you'll see how my experiment turns out. But what I'm getting at is I'm kind of doing a few things a little different. Basically, my theory is, I probably said it before in the past, but I'm going to say it again, is I'm not building an engine to go 100,000 miles. I'm building an engine to go 100 miles an hour. Technically, I'm hopefully going to see 120 miles an hour. But yeah, stay with me here and I'll get at what I'm talking about. Okay, moving on. Got the heads back from Jim Green's. Did have to lap them in a little bit. He likes to use these new wave valve grinders or seat grinders, and sometimes they will leave a burr. I'm assuming that's what happened. When I was doing my CC check, they didn't exactly seal, but I wound up just lapping the valves in with some lapping compound, and so far so good. Everything seems to seal. But one of the things I'm going against the grain here, and it's not really a decision. Well, it is kind of a decision, but it's more based on finance. Right now I don't have money to buy a brand new set of heads. And if you remember from a previous video, I went with a square valve. And what I mean by square valve is the valves are still round, but I've got a 40 millimeter intake and a 40 millimeter exhaust. It's something I read years ago and just kind of wanted to try. Some people are telling me, don't do that, but I'm going to try it. It was the cheapest way to go right now. And it'll lead me up into seeing what I want to do when I decide to invest $1,200 to $1,400 into a set of heads. I do have my eyes set on a couple different heads. Empi's making, it looks like they're making some good heads these days. I haven't heard anything other than that. They look nice, but I don't really know anybody running them yet. If you guys know anybody running these new Empi heads, please feel free to leave a comment down below and let me know how they work. And of course, one of my favorite companies is CB Performance, and they've been building some really good heads for a lot of years, and the CNC technology's come a long ways. But as you can see here, I got a fresh fly cut. And if you remember previously when I showed you these heads, I actually had a lip. And normally what I like to do when I'm trying to gain some CCs, some cylinder head volume, to lower the compression, I usually try to have a lip fly cut into these. So just the cylinder seals on the head and not the, so just the cylinder wall seals on the head. Kind of like adding copper shim. I'm not really one to add copper shims. Just I've tried it in the past and just didn't like it. Can't say that I had any bad luck running them, but I just find it easier. It's one less thing I have to worry about installing and leaking, and I've never really heard too much about leaks, and it's like I got some cleaning to do before I do put these on. But yeah, I had to remove those because with the new cylinders, went with the 92 inner bore, which is bored for a 94 head. And I'll show you the difference here in just a second. But what I was afraid of was that lip was put in there for the old 94 cylinders, and I was afraid to run the 92s on that lip because they weren't exactly the same width. I didn't want to have part of the cylinder on and part of it not on. I didn't know if it was going to create a hot spot or what. I didn't sleep easy at night knowing it was going to be like that. So unfortunately, when I did that, I wound up with I will flip this over, a 40cc chamber, which is very tight for a turbo combination. But it did kind of work out with the deck height I wound up getting in. I'm jumping ahead of myself there, so we'll get there. But the newer heads, you know, if you get them kind of designed for a turbo application, they wind up with more with a 70cc chamber. So I'm about half of what I should be with the heads. The only difference it's going to make is I'm going to have to run a lot of deck height, and we'll see how that works out for me. And we'll see how the 40 valves work out for me. But yeah, eventually I want to wind up with a newer set of heads with the larger CCs, so I don't have to run so much deck height. So hopefully that's not all confusing. But here, we'll show you what I got going on here. As promised, these are my new pistons and cylinders. I was too excited to film an opening, or a box opening, but you'll get the gist of what I got going on here. Here's the sealing surface I've been referring to. It's this cylinder, top of the cylinder here, which is nice and thick compared to the old 94 cylinders. Don't drop them! But just to give you an eye shot here of the difference, or noticeable to the eye. But the reason they're still sitting here, I did a trial fitting, and I actually had to pull them all back apart. I had them all cleaned and everything, but I was having trouble putting them on the engine. My head studs wanted to spread out, and I'll show you what was going on there. I was actually happy when I received these because the area down here had less material. And you can see on my old cylinders where I had to grind in there, get them to go inside the cylinder head studs. These fit, but they didn't fit up here. I'm gonna have to go and massage these areas. So what happens is when you put them down on the cylinders down into the block, the cylinder head studs rub up against here, and then all four of them want to spread out. And when you try to put the head on top there, it was very hard. I did manage to kind of press them on there, but that wasn't right. I wanted to get a trial fitting and see how everything rotated, and everything did rotate well. Here's a picture of everything. As you can see, it looks like I had to go and do, did I have to? Yeah, it's bare in there. But as you can see in here, on my old cylinders, I did have to go and open those up too. All right, now the good part. These are AA automotive pistons and cylinders. Or no, the cylinders are AA automotive, or A automotive. I don't really know how to say that. It's double A automotive. A automotive cylinders. Like I said, they're bored 92, going smaller engine. Hopefully it pays off. But they fit in a 94 case and a 94 head. I've probably said it a million times. You guys are probably getting tired of hearing me say that. But what I did spring for is forged pistons. Now I could have got the cast pistons that A Automotive makes. I could have got A Automotive's forged pistons, but they offered these lovely critters here, which are JE pistons. I don't believe I've ever run JE pistons. I remember back in the day I was running a set of A Automotive pistons and cylinders, and they were the forged versions, but I'd have to dig them up to see if they were JEs or if they were actual A Automotive pistons. Because I was talking with a gentleman on the phone, he said that their forged pistons didn't really like to see high RPMs. And what he was considering high RPMs is something that was over 6 to 6,500 RPMs. And this engine's probably not going to see much more than 6,500, maybe 7. But yeah, so I sprung for the JE pistons, and I really like them. Aren't they cute? And they actually say right down in here, JE. And there's some reference numbers. It says 94 SP, but this is actually 92 piston. So I don't know what they mean by that. And then I like to go and number them all. So I got 4 stamped in this one because this is piston number 4. And they got nice little wrist pens, and then they use I always get these mixed up. They use like I think this would be considered a C-clip. I can never remember if it's a C-clip or an E-clip. Yeah, that's nice and lovely. And you can see the difference in the pistons. These are kind of, I call them a slipper skirt, but I don't know if that's really a slipper skirt. And this is a Mila piston. It's one of my old pistons I was running. And you can just see the difference. Now, Mila says this is a forged piston, but some people say it's kind of a cast forged piston. It's not 100% forged, but they are, I like to say they are very durable. I've had really good luck running these things in the past, and I'll run them again in the future. Unless I really like the JE pistons, but these suckers do come with a price tag. Now to move along, one of the other things that I'm going against the grain here is connecting rods. I think earlier in one of my earlier videos I mentioned I was going to go with a 5.4 inch rod, which for a 84 millimeter crank is kind of on the short side. A lot of people recommend running 5.5, 5.6, even a 5.7 rod. But again, like I said, this is something I am trying. I'm going against the grain here. I'm experimenting on what I'm hoping on the plus side, or the benefit of running this, is I'm going to have a shorter or narrower engine. The 5.5 rod gave me a little bit longer. Man, if you try to run a 5.7 rod, you wind up with a really wide engine, especially if you're trying to get a low compression engine. And what I've got going on here with my deck height and my CCs, I'm going to be roughly around 9-to-1, which again, most people recommend not going over 8.5-to-1 with a turbo combination. But my plans is to slowly upgrade this to run E85, and hopefully once I get the new heads and maybe a different rod combination, I haven't decided if I'm going to continue running the 5.4s. If they work well, I may. I'm probably going to eventually wind up with a 10-to-1 if I run E85. The alcohol, you like to have a higher compression for the alcohol. Engine starts and runs a lot better. And when I was running E85 in the past, I was actually running 2 points higher than that with a 12.5-to-1. And yeah, that was a Spitfire engine. But the other benefit, like I said, the narrower engine, also the shorter rod is going to give me more deck height, which with this combination I need. And I wound up with like 165 thousandths deck height, which is that's a lot, but like I said, I got a 40cc chamber. Benefit of these pistons with a slipper skirt, that did help with the shorter rods. I didn't wind up running into the crank. I did have a little bit of issue here, and I'll show you, where I was kind of coming down and I was touching just one side of the rod with the piston. So I took the time to slowly and carefully grind off some material on there, and I gave myself, I think, 80 thousandths. The paperwork said to have 60 thousandths clearance to everything, but I went a little above and beyond, so I got between 80 to 100 thousandths between, depending on how much I needed to take off. But I had to do that just on one side of each rod, depending on where the piston was located, and rebalanced everything. I'll tell you something with the whole balancing thing. Before, the rods that were in this, I believe, were a 5.5 rod. Before, they weren't balanced. I don't know if I mentioned it before or not. I had a mismatched set of rods, and that's because when I put this originally together, I kind of did just kind of a sweep the floor thing. I kind of just picked up what I had lying around. The pistons, like I said, were mollies. The cylinders were actually A automotive cylinders, and the rods were mismatched. I think I got 2 of them free, just had to pay shipping, and I think I bought the other 2 at really low cost. It was a low cost build, and again, I was kind of experimenting, and it didn't really run. I mean, the engine was together for roughly 10 years, but you know, the first 8 years I really didn't put hardly any miles on it. I was screwing around with the EFI, trying to get that thing in the turbo, trying to get that thing to run well. Just within the last 3 years, I really got some street driving on it, and I expected to take the case apart and seeing that it was pounded out because I had those mismatched set of rods. But yeah, the case looked really good, and I was pleased with it. And now I got a matching set of rods that are balanced. Hopefully things run a little better. So I'm hoping having the narrower engine makes the engine a little more spunkier, a little more and a little snappier, because my understanding is the piston's not going to be up at top dead center very long. Like if you're running a longer rod, it's going to be at top dead center longer than running a shorter rod. So I'm hoping to pick up some speed and RPM there. you know, the rotating mass is going to be lighter because the rods are 100 thousandths shorter. And like I said, I wound up giving myself the deck height I needed. I'm actually running the same spacers I was running before and had that 160 plus deck height. And the other thing I'm running against the grain on is my end play here with the flywheel. When I first put this engine together, I put it together with 12 thousandths end play, and I haven't measured it because I can tell I still got plenty of end play, and it's probably still 12 thousandths. But that's what you want to hear, is that clunking. Wait for this car to go by. So all you're hearing is the clunking of a big block. But yeah, when you're assembling these engines, you definitely want to hear that little clunk. Even if you've got, you know, 4 thousandths end play, you can still kind of hear that clunk. You want stuff to move in there freely. The freer the better, I always say. But when I took this apart, like I said, it was kind of a experiment. I wanted to see, you know, what would happen. The reason you set the end play to, I think the books will say 3.5 to 4 thousandths. Most of them say you want to be between 4 to 6 thousandths. Is because when you got this pressure plate in here in this clutch, you know, you're banging on that flywheel back and forth every time you push that pedal, and you'll have a tendency to pound the case out. But if you're putting 100,000 miles on the engine, I'd be worried about the 12,000. But like I said previously here, I'm not looking for 100,000 miles on this engine. I'm looking for 100 mile an hour. So best thing is to have things free. But when I took the engine apart and looked at the rear main, it wasn't pounded out. It looked really good. It looked just as good as the day I put the you know, the new bearing rear main in it. Yeah, so that's where we're at right now. So my next step is to actually get these pistons and cylinders all ground out. You know, the top of the hole there. Get those carefully ground out, and get the pistons put back in them, and then glue this engine all together, and then slide it back into Simon and cross our fingers. Hope everything runs. So yeah, hang in there. Let's get this going.